Welcome everyone to the EU delegation to the US. We're here with EU Competition Commissioner Vestager, who just wrapped up at the American Bar Association spring meeting. The Commissioner will make a brief statement, and then we can jump into questions and take as many questions as we have time for. Commissioner.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure to be in Washington again on the occasion of the ABA spring meeting. It is very good to meet with colleagues. I think last year we worked with US colleagues on half of our complicated merger cases. So it's a very frequent thing. Meeting Del Rahim and Olhausen is, of course, just tip of the iceberg of the work we do together, because the case teams are in very frequent interaction with one another. I just want also to offer you 3 points of the ABA that's important to us in our priorities right now. First of course, that we put a lot of emphasis on the very basic idea of antitrust, that this is an idea of how the society should be, that consumers have a right to get a fair deal, and that it is a specificity that you, as a citizen in your role as consumer, feel that, well, you're in charge. The market is here to serve you. And the thing is that when markets develop, well, then, of course, consumers ask questions. Well, what are you doing? Are your tools still sufficient? Is the legislation as it should be? And in that, of course, I find that they're quite right to ask us. These are legitimate questions. Because when you see what happens, for instance, in the digital marketplace, I understand why consumers sometimes find that the balance between consumers and business may not be completely right. And this is why we put a lot of efforts into making the digital markets work. Our Google case is a very good example of that, how we use our antitrust law enforcement to make sure that we have an open marketplace, that innovation can take place. The decision last year is now being followed by a monitoring effort to see if Google is living up to the decision. We have taken no decision yet. That, of course, will come. We're working very closely with our external experts, Mavens and KPMG. Ahead of us, we have the two other Google cases, Android and AdSense. They are to come still, but they have sort of the same vein. What happens if a dominant company misuses its dominant position? This enabling innovation by competition, because we do think that competition is one of the main drivers of innovation. This is not only something that's specific to the sort of the tech side of our economy. This is becoming a feature of every sector. And just one very recent example are the agrochemical mergers, both the Dove-DuPont, but also the Bayer-Monsanto merger. Here, a lot of things evolve around making sure that innovation will continue. The US market and the European market, they are to some degree different. Digital agriculture is much more advanced here in the US. The GMO market is also much bigger here since we have a de facto ban of GMO in Europe. That being said, innovation is still a very important part because there is what they call a regulatory pressure. And this is, of course, to make sure that the next generation of pesticides are less toxic to the farmer, obviously, to the environment, insects, and us as end consumers. So this is just to say that, yes, we work a lot with tech and the digital sector as such, but we do not at all shy away from the more traditional sectors. And now we see that things are coming beautifully together since everything digitalizes. The agricultural sector digitalizes just as well as health, mobility, administration, governance, everything. And hopefully, by enforcing competition law, we can do our bit for making markets serve consumers. We're doing quite a lot also in the Commission on the regulatory side of things. You're welcome to ask. It is colleagues who are in charge of that. That'd be Vera Jourova on consumer rights and on rights when it comes to privacy, or my colleague Pierre Moscovici when it comes to sort of the now updated ideas and definitions when it comes to taxation of digital companies. You're obviously welcome to ask also on the regulatory side of things, but I recognize my limitation when it comes to commenting on colleagues' works, but please do ask if I can help you. Thank you.
Let's see. I have a question right here. I should say if you can identify your organization and your name before you ask a question.
My name is Natalia Drozdiak. I'm a reporter with Wall Street Journal in Brussels. Commissioner, I just had a quick question on some of your comments at the ABA panel. You mentioned that you were expecting in the coming month, if I understood correctly, to look closely at these 3 Google cases. So if I just was hoping to get clarification. Does that mean that there will be some sort of decision on those 3 cases coming around the corner in the coming weeks?
No, we don't have a specific calendar. My point was to say that, well, the Google cases has been a priority since my very first day in office, and obviously since we work very hard on them, they are advancing. But we don't have a final calendar for decisions in the AdSense or the Android case yet. The first Google case, the Google Shopping case, is in a somewhat different category because the decision was taken last year. Google has been in the process of implementing their choices when it comes to implementing the decision. And we are now in the process, after the first compliance report by January, to figure out, well, do we find that they are compliant or not? I don't have a timetable for that decision yet, but it is a very granular analysis that we do as to what could be the reasons behind what people see. And I guess you see it as well, that in the shopping box, it is quite rarely that you see anything but a Google shopping comparison offer being displayed to you. And of course, we want to understand the reasons behind this, and we do that, of course, with an open mind.
Yeah, and if you want to wait for the mic to come your way.
Stu from Bloomberg Tax. On the EU stated probe into the UK tax exemption for controlled foreign companies, should we expect the Commission to publish its decision this year?
Again, it's difficult for me to give a precise timing, and that has to do with the way that we work. We may internally think that, well, now we're approaching a decision time, but then we get new information, and of course we'll then take that on board. So I cannot give you a timing of when we'll get to that.
Let's see, Tony all the way in the back there.
Hey, thanks so much, Commissioner. I'm just wondering if you could address Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, which I know has been a topic that kind of came up during the ABA earlier today. And then with it, I'm wondering if you could give your latest thoughts on the role on the bit about data and competition. I know you've spoken in the past about data, the collection of data, and the monetization of data as a potential competition issue. So how has your thinking evolved, specifically given the Cambridge Analytica story?
It's my colleague Vera Jourova who's in charge of handling these issues. And there is a very broad approach among authorities because there is a data privacy issue. There's also an issue about fraud. And there is an issue about the electoral system and electoral laws if they are being misused. And all 3 sort of strains of analysis is being pursued by colleagues as we speak. Jourova spoke with Sandberg 1 or 2 days ago, And Facebook are now in the process of informing their customers about the breaches, but also going through their own systems. And that, of course, we find to be very, very important, that they take this responsibility. One of the things that we all very much appreciate is that the new privacy rights for citizens, simpler, enforceable rights, who come into effect by May this year, that Facebook has said that they will make them the global standard. That we find to be, of course, very promising, hopefully a simplification for the business, but also something that will make it simpler for a lot of people to make sure that they themselves can enforce their privacy rights. On data issues as such, now it has become almost a habit of looking into data issues when we do a merger procedure, antitrust procedures. And we try to be granular in that to understand what kind of data are we dealing with. Because some data, they lose their value in a day or two. They pose no problem whatsoever. Other kinds of data can easily be collected or they can be copied and sold. Not a big problem either. But some kinds of data, they are very, very precious because they are unique. They have a very long time value. They can be an essential source of innovation. And we try to figure out, is any of these things at stake if we have merging parties? We've kind of been in between in the recent agrochemical mergers, where we find that data in terms of knowledge, research base, has become increasingly important. We have also seen, and that is a very, very good thing, that as we've been dealing with the digital agricultural business, and you probably see that in the remedies offered as well, we also see that as a parallel to making sure that you have competition in the agri business. You also have the different stakeholders agreeing on how to manage data properties, how to enable farmers to be able to use portability with the data so they're not locked in with the same provider. And here again, I think you see a very good example of competition law enforcement to allow competition between different providers of digital agricultural products, and sort of a sort of private sector semi-regulatory approach to make sure that you can deal with the fact that data can be a lock-in factor. We will develop this, of course, in the years to come, but trying to make it a habit and a completely integrated part of our analysis, most prominently in our merger analysis.
I think we had David from Axios.
Thank you. Just following up on the Facebook question, Mark Zuckerberg was asked by a member of Congress this week if he thought Facebook was not monopoly. His response was, well, it certainly doesn't feel like that to me. I'm wondering if you share his confidence in that they do not pose a competition concern.
Well, they are big. I think it is in a lot of European states, it is very tricky to find someone who's not in Facebook. Though on a more humorous side of thing, my daughters tend to say that if you're new on Facebook now, you're officially old. Because every young person has been there like forever. So if you only sort of discovered it now, you're quite a latecomer. But that's just on the joking side. We have no sort of official position on that from the European point of view. But you know, of course, that the German Bundeskartellamt, they've had an investigation. They're still looking into it. And they have found Facebook to be dominant in the German market. Not only as an intuition, you see something is big, but also sort of the legal side of that. And they have been looking into these, now what are they called? Take it or leave it propositions that either you sign up to these conditions or you cannot use the service, if that has been too much. If you look into the new rules that are going to be implemented, it will be a still sort of narrow path where you find these take it or leave it options. So you have a specific case in Germany and you have new rules coming into place that hopefully will give consumers better choices that they have than they have right now.
Let's see. we have anyone? Yeah, up here, if you want to just wait for the microphone coming your way.
I'm Tim Johnson with McClatchy Newspapers. The tech companies continue to get bigger and bigger in terms of market capitalization and so forth. I just lost my train of thought on that. I'm just wondering if you're concerned that even though European fines are going to be so large after GDPR, that these companies will just take it as a cost of doing business and will not alter their behavior once they're given these fines.
Well, for me, that's a very sort of tricky line of thinking, because I come from a union built on the rule of law, and even when we disagree, usually we agree that, well, if this is the law, this is the law, and if you get a fine, you change your behavior. What we expect to see is actually compliance. We see a lot of businesses having worked now for quite a long time to be able to be compliant. We also see that this seems to nurture an innovation environment for people saying, well, we will do privacy by design products, and we will also do products that will enable people to enforce their rights. So I think that actually the marketplace will sort of help us ensure that businesses live up to the new rights that consumers have when it comes to privacy, by enabling consumers to enforce these rights. So that you have this sort of double approach, that of course there is authorities that will help people enforce their rights, but also that the market itself will offer products that will enable people to enforce their rights.
We had someone right here,
Katanga Johnson with Reuters. Just wanted to follow up on the matter of the tax probe, but specifically into McDonald's. Just wanting to know if you have an update or a status on that probe. We've been hearing that perhaps there's some sort of bilateral tax deal between the U.S. and Luxembourg. I'm not sure if you can speak to the veracity of that.
Well, it's a tricky investigation because it has we have a two-sided problem here. It's a stated problem on the one hand side, coinciding with the question of how double taxation treaties interfere. And for quite obvious reasons, we have a great respect of international treaties, and double taxation treaties, of course, is one of them. And we're in the analysis as to how those two aspects come together. And this is one of the reasons why we're not done with the case yet.
Yeah, right here.
Hi, thanks. Dave McLaughlin at Bloomberg News. I had a question about the Gazprom talks, and if you had an update on when that settlement might be coming. And I'm also curious if you could talk a little bit about how geopolitical tensions with Russia are affecting the talks.
Well, so far the tensions are mostly coming from a leak of a paper. I think it has been in a number of papers in the last days. It's not a commission paper. I think that will be obvious if someone reads the full paper, that this is not the Commission writes, not the way the Commission writes. And this, of course, is unfortunate because we're not done with the case. The thing with the Gazprom case is that to some degree, I think the name of the case is misleading, because it's not really about Gazprom, it's about Gazprom's behavior in the European markets. It's about Europeans. Because what we want to achieve with the case is for gas to flow freely at affordable prices, which, of course, if we are successful in doing that, it will change the Gazprom behavior in the European market, because the background of the case is what we saw as market participation, disabling customers' ability to resell gas that they had paid for and that they then owned, so that the European market didn't work. We're not done with the case yet. If we were, you would, of course, know. It's very tricky for us when people sort of try to make a connection between our casework and sort of the geopolitical situation. Obviously, we read the papers as well. We're living in the world. But the thing is that antitrust investigation is a market tool. It is not a political tool. And on that, we have to insist, because otherwise, no one will know, well, what are the real reasons behind the casework that we do. We have to maintain that this is about making the market works to serve consumers. And this is also the case in the Gazprom situation.
What's your sense of the timing, though?
Well, timing is always very tricky. You know, we had a market test now quite some time ago. The market test was very broad. It was very good. A lot of people were putting time and effort into commenting on the draft commitments. And what we found was that a number of these comments were very helpful and showed that the first set of commitments weren't sufficient in solving the case, making gas flow freely at affordable prices, which is why we went back and said, well, first draft of commitments won't do. We need to improve them on a number of areas in order to make sure that the criticism raised in the market test, and also the constructive proposals raised in the market test, that this can be taken into consideration. And until we're done, we're not done. But so far, I think the atmosphere around it has been constructive.
Yeah, right up here, Terry.
Thank you. Terry Sprackland with Tax Analysts. I'm curious as to what you see might happen to your workload, basically, as the ideas about how to tax the digital economy progress. I mean, you have the European Union proposals, you have others, but is it going to fundamentally alter your mandate in terms of competition?
Yes and no. Well, the state of play is that sort of businesses in the digital economy, if you accept that very broad notion, on average would pay less than 10% effective taxation, 9–10%, where other businesses on average would pay like 24%. So there is an obvious difference in the contribution to society where they make their profits. And the proposals made by my colleague Pierre Moscovici, the main or very basic line of thinking is that we need to update concepts of corporate taxation from the times when they were thought of in the physical world, so that they're also relevant in a world where you do business in a digital way. So it's updating sort of the idea of permanent establishment. It's also updating the idea of where is value created, especially when you see value being created by the user, for instance, doing a Google search. A Google search has no value before it's done. When it's done, it creates the value because it leaves a tracking and ads can be shown. So it's this sort of updating. It's not something, in my opinion, revolutionary. It is to say, these are the concepts we know. They worked in the physical world with old school companies. Let's update these concepts so we also understand them with other business models, with other ways of creating value, with other kinds of presence, but with the present just the same. When it comes to my work, the basis of that is that in Europe, a member state cannot hand out selective advantages to one business which is not available to others. In that respect, of course, there is a risk that we will have to continue working. That being said, changes are happening on ground. In Luxembourg, they have changed the tax code so that the Fiat case cannot repeat itself. Same thing has happened in Cyprus. In the Netherlands, they have changed the way of approaching cooperatives, so that now true cooperatives get a special tax benefit, but not so true cooperatives. In Ireland, they have changed the legislation on the so-called double Irish. So it is grandfathered, but it's almost done. So you see on ground, you have European initiatives, but you also have member states changing their legislation to make sure that no business is having a selective advantage. That doesn't change the fact that there still is a risk that someone will be handing out a favor, and if not, in terms of a tax benefit, that may be a subsidized loan or a building lot available to some at a price that's not available to others.
Hi, thank you. Emily Tamkin, Foreign Policy. You mentioned this agro-digital meld as sort of a space to watch. Are there other industries that you see moving into the digital space that you and your team are sort of keeping an eye on and that we should keep an eye on moving forward? Thank you.
Well, you know, our approach is very case specific. That being said, of course, we also do sector inquiries. I've been doing two, one in the e-commerce and another one into capacity mechanisms in the electricity market. What we see both when we do the sort of more sector horizontal analysis, but also in the concrete casework, is that, well, almost no matter what sector we look into, data digitalization plays a still bigger role. So for us, we're sort of changing the approach from having a tech approach to having a tech economy approach. It's not the same sort of, it has not the same penetration in every sector, but we find traces or nascent digital issues, I think, in almost every sector when we have a merger approach to us. And of course, it also plays a role in our toolbox. We need to get more and more advanced with our IT tools in order for ourselves to be able to handle huge amounts of data and to go through the paperwork and organize our cases in the best possible way in order to make sure that businesses have due process rights upheld.
Yeah, all the way in the back there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Nancy Skolma, tech reporter at Politico. How effective do you think that your U.S. counterparts are at the moment at keeping U.S. tech companies in check, ensuring that they're competitive?
Well, I think that would require very specific casework to answer that question. No, the thing is that we work together. We don't evaluate each other. And I'm never judgmental or motive-seeking with colleagues, and I think they are neither with us. But we are working very closely together on the specific cases, and that I very much appreciate, and obviously I don't question their priorities or their way of working.
Okay. Can I, more concrete follow-up just very quickly, can you tell us who you met with this week and what was on the table? This is a very, very short visit, and it was even shorter due to a quite bumpy ride over here. So I went here for the ABA spring meeting, and then I'm just here after lunch with Olhausen and De Lahim. And this is about it. I'll come back in September for a full week. Looking very much forward to that, because that would also give me a chance to have meetings on the Hill, which is highly appreciated on my side, in order, of course, to get a deeper understanding of the discussions here.
Anyone else? Yeah, if you want to wait for the microphone to work its way.
Hi, Jeremy Fleming-Jones from PAR. Commissioner, could you tell us a bit more about the raids on the sports distributors that took place earlier this week, notably where the information underlying the suspicions for those raids may have emerged from? You have another investigation on Hollywood studios, which has some parallel potential information overlaps, and I wondered whether or not you could just tell us a bit about that, and whether or not you are cooperating with other European agencies on that investigation.
You know how this goes, right? That I can confirm that those who have confirmed raids have taken place. And this is about it. Because these are so early days in these cases. Obviously, whenever we do an inspection, we need to have a due course to do so. But whatever evidence we take, we analyze that with an open mind, as we should. So it's very early days.
Can you say whether it was ex officio or?
No, we don't give that kind. I can talk a little around it. You'll get the same answer, which is a no answer.
So with that in mind, any other questions? Yeah, gentleman next there.
Hi, Jules Johnson, also from PAR. I was wondering if you could provide any more information on the progress of the best practice guidelines for businesses handling RFIs and merger reviews, time frame, where we're at, what we're looking at. Thanks.
Yeah, well, very happy that you have noted that we're doing this, because sometimes it's difficult to get an engaged debate about our procedures. I think actually it makes quite a difference for businesses if we are able to give, clear guidelines enabling people to work with us in an easy way. And this is the purpose of making these guidelines, to enable businesses to say, oh, when they ask these papers, this is what we're supposed to do. And we put a lot of effort into this. I don't know the exact deadline, but it's relatively soon, because we think that there is a demand, and we think that it will be a good thing for businesses to know what are we dealing with when we enter into a procedure with the competition law enforcer, in order to make it, no matter how you see the case, but to make it as simple as possible, knowing how complicated it can be.
Any idea of what topics you'll be covering in the paper, or is it the broader?
Well, it's very much about what happens when you get a request for information. We're not any better than the information that we get in. This is anything but our ivory tower work. Both with the businesses, we get information from them when we do market tests. We get information from competitors, customers, subcontractors, interested parties, unions, NGOs, and we would like to say, well, this is what we expect of you. We try to do things simple, knowing that we ask a lot from you. This is how you can enable this process to go as fast as possible. So requests for information, what should you deliver in order for us to do our job the best possible way. I think, I don't even know if that number is public, but in the merger of Bayer Monsanto, I think we went through borderlining 1 million documents. It's all kind of things. And of course, few of them are of, crucial importance. But we now have the possibility of going through a lot of things, and the number of documents are growing because the number of documents in the world is growing as such, I think, in every business. But so does our capacity to go through things. You may have seen that we sometimes have to use the stop the clock tool that we have. And this is one of the signs to us that we need to give better guidance for people to be able to work with us. Because stop the clock is, of course, nothing that we would want to do. We only do it when we have reasons to do so, because we don't have the information on board that we need to do the job.
Any other questions? Going once, Twice? No. Well, thank you for coming.